To the family Cabaret. I want to say that it's an honor, and it always is for me to be able to participate in anything that the family is doing. I've had a long-standing relationship, with the family, and it always gives me a lot of pleasure to be able to speak about the family and its founder, Marvin Felix Camillo. And before I begin, I would like to also acknowledge two people that were with me a long time and were there at the beginning, Pawnee Sills and Gwen Town. Please stand up.
Yeah, Mama. Yeah.
Believe me when I tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that these two people were very integral to the operation of the family in terms of its daily runnings, in terms of performances. They were there. They were real troopers all the time. Backed Marvin like 9,000%, and it was a very, it was a pleasure to work with them, and it's even more of a pleasure to be able to see them today, for me personally, after having not seen them for so long. So I want to while the performers are getting ready and the dressing rooms and, doing their things performers do before they start to perform, I'd like to briefly talk about the family. And as I was thinking about what I would say, because I've actually been here before and said this kind of like before, I think what's important as I thought about the family is to maybe give a little backdrop as to what was going on when the family was founded back, in the early 1970s. For me, I would say it was a time when young people in particular had come into their own. They had grown out of the 50s era where life was just, it was just a game, it was just fun, they had their issues, but they actually grew up in the late 60s and early 70s and started to really look at the world and see that, we need to become involved, we need to make a change. And so we had the backdrop of the Vietnam War, we had Kent State where some students got shot as a result of protesting things that were going on with the government. People got into demonstrations, they involved themselves. Young people were movers and shakers back in those days. And Marvin was also a mover and a shaker. And it's funny how life sometimes brings you into something when you're not necessarily aware of what you're being brought into, but as that situation starts to evolve, it starts to take its own shape. When I first met Marvin Felix Camillo, who was also known as Pancho, we were both actors working for a guy named Gray Smith who had a little street theater company. He did community shows, and most importantly, especially as it pertained to Marvin later on, although we didn't know it at the time, we did shows in prisons. At the time, I would have to say prior, before that, the attitude for somebody who's in jail, you're in jail, you're doing your time, case closed, over and out, that's all there is to say about it. Back in the 70s, people started to say, well, okay, yeah, you're in jail, but guess what? Does that mean that you have to stay there and constantly repeat the same thing over and over? Why not try to do something? So there were certain groups, and the family ended up being one of them, in Gray's troop, although it wasn't actively involved in terms of the prison situation like Marvin was, we were going there, trying to add something different to the prison experience. So, we're in this theater group, Marvin and myself, we're actors, we're touring prisons, the summer comes to an end because it was during the summer, we split up, I don't hear from Marvin for a while, and he calls me up somewhere in the summer, fall/winter of that year and says, Rick, I'm up at Riverside, I'm working on this play, called Short Eyes. I want you to get involved in it. I was like, cool. Didn't happen. Later on, when the family went down to the public theater, with a very important innovator in theater at that time called Joseph Papp, I came on board. And that's, how the story began. But even actually before that story, an actress who was a very celebrated and famous actress named Colleen Dewhurst first introduced Marvin to the idea of working in the prisons as an actor, as a drama teacher, and obviously somewhere along the line of that experience it resonated with Marvin because he worked with Tito Goya, Mikey Pinheiro, let me see who else, Felipe Torres, Tito Goya, J.J. Johnson, and if I'm missing anybody, somebody, Kenny Stewart, Ben Jefferson, okay? And obviously, this experience meant something very important to them, so much so that they asked Marvin to continue once they were released, and he did. And that's how the family started. And when I came in, they were already down at the New York Shakespeare Festival, working on this play called Short Eyes, which at the time was the equivalent of, what can I say? It just, at that time, Broadway was very, it was very clean in a sense. There was nothing, realistic in a sense, at least that compared anything to what Short Eyes was about. People being in prison. People didn't even know what that meant on Broadway. So Marvin, along with Joseph Papp, now introduced Short Eyes. When it hit the public theater, it was like an explosion. Nobody had ever seen anything that powerful theatrically before. Mikey got a lot of credit for being the playwright, but as I've said over the years, and I'll say it again, and don't want to beat this drum too hard, if it wasn't for Marvin, none of that would have ever happened. Okay? Marvin Felix Camillo was the core, the center of Mikey Pinheiro being able to launch himself from simply being a no-name poet / playwright into basically what was a celebrity in terms of his work as a poet and what was his work as a playwright. And also let me add that the actors, because I was there, the actors helped Mikey with that piece that became the finalized version that if you go in the drama bookstore right now and see, the actors themselves also improvised different scenes which eventually became part of that play. Even the scene I was in, when they have the two homosexuals walking across the tier, that was not part of the original play. When we were down at the public theater, Marvin decided he wanted to add that, and that's how my name actually ended up being in the play as well, because at that time I was understudying the roles of El Rahim and Ice. And when he added that, that brought me into the mix as far as actually being listed as one of the actors in the original play. So Marvin's experience and with the actors and with Mikey Pinheiro was a very powerful experience. And I think stepping beyond that for a second, there were a lot of theater groups around at that time. But I think there was something, and I may be prejudiced because I work with the family, there was something unique and special about Marvin that I think not only as a director, not only as an actor, and not only as a founder of a theater company, which was very different and unique and exclusive to him. And what that was that Marvin had a way of making you feel that you could realize the potential within yourself that you yourself may not have even been aware that you had. He had a very comfortable way of allowing you to move into a process without any qualifications, without any conditions, without any before I need to know this or have to have done that. And people who never acted in their life came into the family and found within themselves, the actor within themselves, whether or not they became professional actors or not, didn't make a difference. They found a voice on stage. They found an experience whereby they could express themselves as individuals, both mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, behind working with the family. The guys who had come out of prison, Marvin was really the foundation of these guys in terms of them being able to hold themselves together outside here in the free world. Now, not everybody survived that experience over time, okay? Some people did, and some people didn't, because ultimately it's also up to you. What do you decide to do once you are given the choice to make a change? Some people, made a positive choice and made a positive change. Some people over time fell back into old patterns, and that's the end of the story. But Marvin, as he worked in the prisons, always gave individuals a feeling that somehow, you are not locked into this experience. You do not have to be there. This does not have to be what's written on your epitaph at the end of your story. You have a chance to do something, to change something. All you simply have to do is to believe in yourself. And through theater, Marvin helped a lot of guys who were in prison believe in themselves and gave them a chance to see, I can do something different. So Marvin, in terms of founding the family, the actors that were part of it, it was a collaboration of actors, it was a collaboration of guys who had been incarcerated, and Marvin was the centerpiece. He was the sun. He was the thing that drove everybody's energy to be able to accomplish things that they felt that they could not accomplish. When Marvin passed away, ultimately now we have a situation where, okay, so what happens now? Because this whole dream was built on Marvin. And of course, when somebody builds a dream, it's very, very difficult to fill that person's shoes. And I would have to say, none of us who had been part of the family, I know certainly I didn't feel like I could fill those shoes. Okay, but nevertheless, there was an effort to see, okay, how do we keep this going? J.J. Johnson, who was also one of the original members of the family, decided to pick up the helm and see what he can do with it. He was down at Quando, so the family continued for a while in his guidance. When that situation kind of dissolved, then it was left in limbo for a minute until Shamsul Alam, who's here. Shamsul, stand up. Everybody knows you. Shamsul decided to pick up the helm. We did theater pieces, because Shamsul was not only an actor with the family, but he was also one of its principal playwrights. So we did his plays, back in the day, Impact, Bullpen, if I miss anything, just run on, brother. Tell me, feet. Akeem. Dig it. All right. What else?
Short Eyes.
Okay, yeah, but I mean when we were.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Right. But he was like, long story short, Shamsul is a celebrated playwright, and when Marvin was alive, he was a principal playwright and an actor. And when he took over the helm, of the family, then he in turn, again, was the mover, the driver, the organizer. Okay, let's do this, let's go here, let's perform that. He kept the banner flying. Later on, now, Panchito, somebody whom I had met when he was just like a little kid. That's the first time I saw him. He was about like this high, maybe this high, and that was actually down at the public theater. I think the first time I saw him. Other people probably saw him before me, but that was the first time I saw him. Shamsul got in touch with him in 2010 through Facebook. Oh, Facebook, good thing, right?
Yeah.
All right, so through Facebook, they get in touch with each other. And so now, Panchito feels, that this is something that he would like to do, to honor his father's memory, to honor the tradition of the family, to pick up this ball, to run with it, to see what he can do with it. And that's why we're here today. Okay, Panchito is now trying to turn the family's page and take it to a new place, to build on what his father has done, and to keep that memory alive. Not only that memory, but that energy of who Marvin was as an individual, as a man, as a director, as an artist, all those things. So here we are today welcoming you to the Cabaret, which was a mainstay, and again, Marvin's creation back in the day when we were at the Black Theater Lines. And that was one of the things Marvin could do. He could spontaneously just come up with an idea. And everybody would go like, oh my God, Marvin, what are you talking about? No, come on, let's go. and a lot of times you kind of like felt like you were being like rushed along like something with a huge wave. You didn't even know where this was going. All you knew was you just being dragged, pushed, or pulled along. And Marvin was going like, you know what? It's all good. Just follow me. I'll show you how this goes. That was one of his traits. He had a natural ability to just spontaneously, come up with ideas, that again, show people what they can do. I remember his nephew, Craig Tankard. Craig, when we did the Cabaret, Craig, he couldn't sing or thought he couldn't sing. Or, Marvin said, you know what, just get up there and sing something. And Craig got up there and he realized that he could sing. And that's the way it was. You got up, you did something, it didn't make any difference if you were a singer, if you studied singing, if you studied acting, it didn't matter. Marvin's energy was such that he would always show you what you yourself didn't see. And so on that note, if Panchito and everybody else is ready, I'll wind this down, or if not, I'll just keep it ready. They're ready. All right, so on that note, let me end this introduction and welcome Panchito.